All right, let's jump right into this explainer. We're tackling something that totally flips the script on how we look at our own personal evolution through the lens of astrology. We constantly hear about planetary transits, big life transitions, entering new chapters, but we rarely stop to examine what those shifts actually mean for us on the inside. So today, we're going to reframe how you look at the events in your life, using some incredibly deep concepts to ask a very modern and honestly, a very urgent question about your personal development. So, are you actually growing, or are you just changing? This is the fundamental question our source material hits us with right out of the gate. And it's a hard truth, right? Because, look, planets move, transits shift, chapters inevitably close. But all that movement, it doesn't guarantee you are actually growing. You could change careers, jump into a totally new relationship, move across the country, or even adopt a whole new belief system without ever truly understanding yourself any better. Section 1. Change versus true growth. Let's get into why swapping your job, your surroundings, or your social circle doesn't automatically mean you've leveled up internally. Here is the wild paradox we're dealing with. Astrology reminds us that change, that just belongs to time. If you wait long enough, things literally have to change. But growth, that belongs entirely to awareness. And growth is rarely comfortable because it actively demands that you outgrow an old identity. Time is always going to change your circumstances for you, for sure, but only your own awareness can spark genuine growth. Think about the heavy hitters like Rahu, Ketu, and Saturn. They are perfect examples of this. They don't force wisdom on you. They definitely don't hand you growth on a silver platter. What they do is create these unavoidable circumstances where your old go-to responses just completely stop working. Saturn might hit you with the crushing weight of responsibility. Ketu might just quietly dissolve the very attachments you thought to find you. But whether those moments actually become growth, that depends entirely on how consciously you meet them. Section 2. Unmasking your emotional patterns. Because knowing what's happening around you is really just step 1. How we actually feel about it is a whole different ballgame. It's honestly so easy to confuse emotional intensity with real transformation. A rough transit or a really difficult period can feel profoundly life-altering simply because it hurts so much. But, as the source points out, pain alone doesn't deepen your understanding. The moon reflects your emotional world, yeah, but it also shines a massive spotlight on your tendency to just repeat familiar reactions. Just look at how these cycles trap us. If every disappointment you face triggers the exact same fear, if every rejection brings up that familiar, deep-seated self-doubt, or heck, if even your successes just lead to the same old imposter syndrome, then change has definitely happened in your life. But true growth has absolutely not. You're merely running the same emotional loops, just on a brand new stage. Section 3. Redefining thoughts and expansion. So, if our feelings can trick us into thinking we're growing, what about our brains? Let's take a look at the intellect and the ego. Enter Mercury. This governs your inner dialogue, the interpretations, and the stories you spend for yourself all day long. Real growth kicks off here when that inner voice becomes more honest than it is comforting. You'll know you're actually growing when you stop looking up at the sky asking why life is so unfair, and instead, you start asking what this experience is trying to reveal about your own hidden assumptions. The same horoscope can be interpreted as a prison or as a mirror. Just let that sink in for a second. It is such a phenomenal quote. It's a massive reminder that your internal understanding always has to shift before your external destiny appears to change. You get to choose. Are you going to be trapped by your circumstances, or are you going to use them as a mirror to see your own inner state? And that brings us to Jupiter, the planet of expansion. We almost always assume bigger is better, right? But here is the kicker. A larger income, more influence, or wider recognition can magnify your existing weaknesses just as easily as your strengths. If your pride grows way faster than your wisdom, well, expansion just turns into excess. True expansion teaches perspective, not just accumulation. It asks, are your judgments kinder now? Is your confidence finally paired with humility? True growth enlarges your consciousness way before it ever enlarges your circumstances. Moving right along to Section 4, shifting values and actions. As your consciousness expands, how do your daily desires and actions actually keep up with that shift? Venus is usually the one that quietly steps in to question what you actually value. Have you ever noticed how some deep desires just sort of evaporate? And often it's not because you finally got what you wanted, but simply because they don't fit who you're becoming anymore. When that career or that ambition that used to completely define your idea of success suddenly feels strangely empty, That is not a loss. It's actually the very first sign that your priorities are evolving way beyond your old definitions. So when values shift, our actions have to follow, and that's Mars territory. Mars reveals growth through action, but there's a brilliant distinction here from the source material. Fighting the exact same struggle in your life, just with way more anger or brute force, that is still just repetition. Acting with true, grounded clarity, however, is actual transformation. I mean, it's perfectly summarized right here. The warrior who learns patience has grown more than the warrior who simply wins another battle. Every single conflict in your life carries two choices. One just strengthens your knee-jerk reactions. The other strengthens your awareness. Astrology doesn't just throw a party because you want to fight. It observes deeply how that conflict actually reshapes your character. Which brings us to our final section, Section 5, Recognition over Prediction. Honestly, this is the ultimate goal of this entire system, and it completely flips the traditional script on its head. So many people look at astrology as this giant fortune-telling machine. But maybe its deepest purpose isn't prediction at all. It's recognition. It's a tool meant to drag your recurring patterns out of the shadows so they aren't unconscious anymore. The lunar nodes, Rahu and Ketu, they can create this frantic, urgent movement that is so easily mistaken for real progress. But true astrology brings those hidden, unconscious repetitions right into the light. So how do you actually know when you've hit that level of profound change? You know it's real when those external events finally become internal understanding. You literally start responding completely differently to the exact same themes that used to totally wreck you. As the source beautifully puts it, the horoscope might remain exactly the same, but the person living it, they do not. Every new chapter finally stops being just another repetition wearing a different mask. Because at the end of the day, growth isn't about some dramatic outward makeover. It's measured by how differently you meet the life that has been unfolding right in front of you this whole time. So I am going to leave you with this one last thought to chew on today. Look at the challenges and the circumstances sitting right in front of you. How differently are you meeting that life today compared to the person you were yesterday?